Hello everybody, welcome to episode number 3 here on the E38. This is Project Carlsbad. I am Brian, and in today's episode we learned a couple of valuable new lessons. The first of which is plastic on a 20-year-old car is crap, and that you probably shouldn't let fuel touch your body because it kind of burns if it touches the wrong spots, and best case it's just going to smell bad for a couple of days. So with that out of the way, let's get the instrument cluster pulled and get that LCD replaced. Now, we've talked about this cluster before. It's in terrible shape. You can't read the IKE display at all. I mean, on here it says fasten seatbelt, I think. That's kind of what it looks like. Several of the bulbs are out. You can't even see the mileage on this thing. So this is in dire need of being repaired. One of the great things about this cluster is it only takes 2 of these Torx 10 screws to actually remove the entire cluster. Now, if you've ever tried to remove the radio in this car, you'll be familiar with these kind of clips. You just have to push in this little bit right here, and then this little lever folds over, and it pops right out. It works the same for this white clip, as well as for the black clip on the left-hand side. Oh man, well unfortunately I think I broke off a little piece of this yellow clip, or this green clip that was in there. Yeah, it looks like a piece popped off. I think I can kind of hear it inside, but we'll take the back off. When the back comes off, we should be okay. We should be able to pull it out of there. But let's get this thing on the bench and start taking it apart. All right, I think I've got everything I need here. I have some tools, I have the cluster. It's a little bit dirty. We'll make sure and clean it off as soon as I get this thing apart. You can hear the piece rattling around inside, unfortunately. And we ended up getting the pixel cluster from Pixel Fix, I believe was the name. We'll put the link down in the description, but it's got the full LED and the strip incorporated with it. So let me get the back in there before I ruin it. We've got 3 light bulbs, like I had mentioned, and you can see the light bulbs in here. These will be some of the ones we switch out. I'm not sure which ones are bad. We'll probably pull all 5 of them. No, at least a couple of them are good. We'll see which ones are bad and replace those. He sent along some tools that should help out. Then we have this little silicone strip that will replace a piece that's inside of here. And I will also need to find like a business card or some other sort of card that I can that goes underneath this to kind of help give it a little bit of extra support. But the first thing we need to do is to start pulling these tabs. We're gonna twist the tabs so this whole thing will come off. And one thing I did notice is this has not been cut before, so this has not been serviced before, which is good to know. There we go, that one moved. That one's in. This one's already in down here. Just using a little bit of persuasion, being super gentle with this. Just enough that when I turn it, it pops. There we go. There's the piece that broke. Dang it. All right, check the motor on all these guys. Those all look pretty good. This one's a little bit slow, but it's the gas gauge, so I'm not too overly worried about that. I would protect this normally. I put a piece of tape over it to protect it, but there's no reason to do that because we're replacing it. All right, next thing is we got to remove these 8 screws right here. I'm just going to loosen them up a little bit. make sure they're not tight. Then I'll use my electric tool because I'm lazy. All right, now hopefully the back comes off relatively easy. There's a couple of clips I think that I gotta pull off to get this off of here, but let's just start with being extra gentle, shall we? Is that it? Oh, that was it. Got that last one. There we go. Backing plate off. All right, one of the things I'm gonna look at really quick is I wanna look at each one of these bulbs. See if I can tell if they're blown or not. I'll have to go, I have a magnifying glass I have to go look under because my eyesight is not good enough for this. But I thought I would go ahead and remove these before I start doing any of this anyway, just in case. I don't want to ruin these right now either. And they're all the same, so it doesn't matter which ones I put back where. All right, so I have a choice. I could use the tools that came from the Pixel Fix. And they have some good instructions that tells me which one of these should be pulled off and which one should be pulled on. But the key behind these is that I need to be super careful and actually grab, and it's really hard to see. There's really not any way I'm gonna be able to show you through here. I don't have my macro lens out, but if I can grab, that's why I actually made these pliers. So I can actually physically grab the motor and hold it in place while I pull those out. So I could actually do that. I don't want to try and destroy these motors, so I'm going to go ahead and try the drilling method, even though I really didn't want to. We're going to give it a shot anyway. There we go. For fuck's sake, dude. All right, so this is where I am on this one. We're out, and I'm not super happy with the fact that this side broke off. I know, and everything I've read says it's not that big of a deal. It's very typical. It's very common. The unfortunate thing is that the piece broke out where the screw goes in, and that is pretty critical to getting that bond correctly on here. So I think what that means is I'm gonna have to do a little bit of research. I think I'm gonna see if I can find this part. I don't have any, it doesn't look to me like there's any reason that I shouldn't be able to get this out of an old one, or even find this part in and of itself. It shouldn't even be that expensive if I can find it. And then we've already got the LCD for it, so there's no sense in replacing the LCD on this one right now. We'll do this cleanup really quick. We're gonna set this aside until I can get the parts in for this, and then we'll put it back together. The unfortunate thing is that means that car is gonna be sitting. I don't know if it'll even start without the cluster in there, to be honest with you. I'm sure it'll throw all kinds of codes, so that's kind of frustrating. So let's get this cleaned up with some acetone, and then we'll get started on the fuel system. All right, in the interest of keeping things moving forward, and dealing with the cluster a little bit later, we gotta wait for the parts to get in. I did get them from a friend of mine, so it should be here like a day or two. Let's work on the fuel pump. So underneath the seat here, I just gotta pull the seat up. The fuel pump exists right here. We're gonna take this guy out. We're planning on replacing the fuel pump. We'll keep the sending unit and everything else that's associated with it. I just got a high flow fuel pump that I'm gonna replace it with. And then underneath the passenger seat here is the fuel filter, so we need to replace that as well. So we got a little bit of disassembly to do, and then we'll do this together really quick. And we'll have one more thing done before we can finish the cluster. So, tools. Ooh. Somebody had some graham crackers or something. Luckily, it's not too bad. Actually, one of the nice things I noticed about this is that the cup holder wasn't working really well. So with this out, I can go ahead and pull that out as well. It looks like whoever sat back here tended to carry change in their pocket. So I think finding an extra 34 cents in the back I got a really good deal on this car. And looking at this, there's this perforated bit of plastic right here that when this has been maintained and the fuel filter has been out, this has already been cut open. So as with other things we've been finding on this car, which I think is actually really nice, is that people have not done anything to this car. Everything that's on this car is original, which, you know, on a 20-year-old car is a bad thing to some degree, but the flip side of it is that I know these parts are original. I don't have to worry about knowing what someone else had done to them. So it definitely makes maintaining it a little bit easier. We're in the money. We're in the money. Woo. Now there had to have been kids that used this car. Legos and glitter. Not that I mind glitter. I mean, there's really there's good glitter out there. Oh, it's almost like they made this for first graders. Yeah, they got nice little perforations to help you figure out where it's going to go. Now we've only got 4 screws, and this should come out. This has a little gasket under it. We got the gasket to replace this with, so let's get the screwdriver and get it out of here. You know what we forgot to do? I need to plug this back in. I need to start the car, pull the fuse that controls this pump, and then run out of gas, because we don't want to be doing this with the gas pressurized in the system, actually. Just come over here to the fuse block, find fuel pump, which I believe is 17. Let's see, CDFG fuel pump, 1757. So it should be 17 up here. I don't like using these to pull fuses, but I can. So let's find fuse number 17, 16, 17. Top of the 3rd row. Should be a 10 amp. This should be this one right here. 10 amp, 32 volts. That should be the fuel. Or, you know, be smarter than the car. First you got to start it to get it running, and then you pull the fuse. Now you pull the fuse plug. Here it changed, and there it goes. The thing is we know that the fuel pump is working. At least it was a few seconds ago. Now we have the system depressurized, so that when we get under the car and we take care of the fuel filter, I'm gonna have to worry about it. Whoop. Now I need to get that looks like a 10 mil bolt, maybe 8, and we're gonna take off, what, 8 of them? Great. So I got a 10 on an extension, and some of these I'll be able to get into, some of them not so much. So I've also got a ratcheting wrench, and then I have to cut off the fuel hose to this bad boy, just so I can get this whole thing out of here. So this is probably the first thing we got to do. Hopefully these are going to work. And there it goes. Easy peasy. Lemon squeezy. There we go. That's a little trickle. Actually, you know, it's kind of funny. There's a lot of people who either do or don't like the smell of fuel. Oddly enough, I do actually kind of like the smell of fuel. Or petrol, as my British friends would call it. I suppose the Australians too, right? What the Kiwis? What do the Kiwis call it? We're from New Zealand. Is it petrol? Fuel? Gas? Go-go juice? I don't know. Oh, I knew there was going to be one. All right, this was the last one. And I just realized too, as I was talking about this earlier, I said this is the gasket. That's not a gasket. That's just a little foam guy to keep the smells out. The gasket's actually under here. I don't know what I was thinking when I said that. But that's where I have the, a little fuel there. Oh, I should put my gloves on too. Make sure and wear gloves. I shouldn't be doing this without gloves on. There we go. Now we got it. I even ran this thing down low on gas. And actually it looks really clean. There's not any, I was worried there might be fuel or dirt or something in there. I mean, there's fuel obviously, but I was worried there might be dirt or something down in there, but it's not bad at all, actually. Not bad at all. There's the float for the level. See if we can get this guy out of here. Oh, I should be wearing gloves. You just got to squeeze the either side of the little bracket that's holding it in there, and it comes right out. No problemo. Sending unit and everything. Sending unit, float, and that's why I have this guy. Just to get it all in there. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get a little something to pick all this stuff up just to make sure that it's not just sitting in there. I'll get a little bucket for it all. But yeah, you can kind of see down in there. There's just a little bit of that down in there. It's not low enough on fuel, even though I ran it down to almost an empty. But there's not low enough that I can get in there and clean that out. So I'm not gonna drain the tank. If it was really dirty inside and it was something like that, I'd be a little more worried about it, but that's fine. Considering how clean the fuel looks, if I didn't know better and I didn't know that it hadn't already been not serviced, because it hadn't been taken out unless they dropped it from the bottom, which doesn't make any sense. But I would say this is actually in really good shape. It probably doesn't actually need this service, but we're all about doing preventative maintenance. So we've already got it out. Let's take care of it. Before I put the fuel filter on the bench, or the old one, let's get the new one out and take a look. So this is from Quantum Fuel Systems. Of course, I'm not sponsored or anything. I have no sponsors yet. If you want to sponsor me. But this was a high float fuel filter that came from them that they recommended for this vehicle. And the nice cool thing about this is it comes with all these little extra pieces too. Let's get some scissors out. It's got the filter on the bottom of it. They say fuel filter, the fuel pump, not fuel filter. But it does have this little internal filter. Of course, we also have the full fuel filter that we'll do here in just a minute too. But this is the dehumidifier that replaces the other one that looked like it was actually in pretty good shape. We got this guy, we got a new hose that I'll show you here in 1 second, and we have a couple of new hose clamps. Here's the float, sending unit, all the happy jazz, and here is the actual pump. And all we really need to do is we're gonna replace this guy, and this is, we've got these zip ties on here, which is fine, we can cut these guys off. And we're gonna cut off this hose, because we've got a replacement for it. Great, did I just gash my fingers? I did. I'm gonna take a little break. I take blood thinners. That's not good. But this is positive lead, this is positive and negative, I'm pretty sure. So I just gotta remember to keep them in the right order. Light brown is right side, which I think is positive. Dark brown is left side, which I believe is negative. So we just pull these guys off gently. And the good thing is I only have to disconnect one side of the hose because we're only gonna connect the new one to the new pump. Get that thing out of there. So there we go, there's a holder for it. And here's the pump. Altogether, it looks pretty much the exact same thing. 12 volt pump, positive, negative. I'll be curious to see if there's any like sound difference. There's slight layout differences, but they're pretty much the same thing. So we got output turned on, negative. You can hear that going. Now I worry a little bit. This has got fuel in it, so let's bring this back up again, because it's probably not very smart to have electricity and fuel going together at the same time. So we're gonna be very careful with this. Yep, there is fuel in there, and we're not going to do that again. But the interesting thing that I just saw in there is a bunch of sediment in there, tons of sediment in there, and it was a little bit lower pitch. So it's interesting. I'll be curious to see in the long run whether or not this makes a big difference or not. You just saw me do that, but please don't do that at home. That was a bad idea. I could use proper fuel hose in here, but this is what came with it, and the other one has been in there for a long, long time. It's been for 20 years, and it didn't have any problems, so I think we're gonna be okay here. There we go. Oh. Ugh. This side, now we need to clean this guy up a little bit. This is really dirty on this side. All right, I sprayed a little bit of brake clean into the contacts in here. I don't like that in there, so I'm gonna go ahead and just use a little bit of actually electronic quick drying formula. You can see how quickly that's flashing off around there. But I'm gonna use that to clean off the electronic contacts, just in case. That's in much better shape. I don't think there's anything to clean on here. I'm gonna go ahead and clean the ends of these guys. It looks like there's just a little bit of, I don't know if that's corrosion or what that is, but Let that dry off for a little bit, and then we should be ready for reassembly. All right, there we go. So the key I found for getting this on, for me anyway, if you use the same combination, was I was trying to kind of twist it on, trying to get it past that bulb, and what I found was actually rocking it up and down or back and forth worked a lot better than trying to twist it on. If anyone ever does this, that worked for me. Rocking versus twisting seemed to have made it a little bit easier. So there we go. I think it's all ready to go. Let's go put it back in the car. Actually, no, before I put that in, to make my life a little bit easier, let's go ahead and get this guy off. I think I'm gonna have to use a screwdriver maybe. Ugh. And I got a new one to put on there. Nope, it's coming off okay. Let's just make sure it doesn't fall in the tank, shall we? Here we go. Part 22506054738. It's not really sealing it down that much. I mean, it's sealing it, but it's not sealing it. It's not like a transmission gasket. Finally. All right, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put 4 bolts on, get it hooked up electronically, get the fuel line hooked up, and then we will turn it on, put the fuse back in, turn on the power and see if it primes it a couple times. Make sure we can hear it in here running, and we should be good to go. That looks good. That looks good. All right, let's just do a quick test and everything's good. We'll put the rest of it together. There it goes. Go, fuel pump, go. This fuel plate cover was built in May of 1999. It's 22 years old. There we go. Fuel pump done. All right, good news is that pump works awesome. It was pretty easy to put in. Didn't take any effort really that much. And the good thing is that by just replacing the pump, that was only like 60 bucks, maybe it was $70, 69, something like that. But now that we got that done, the good thing is the cluster just came in. So I'm gonna be able to get to that tonight as well. But before I get back on the cluster, let's go ahead and take care of the fuel filter, which by the way is, we're here on the passenger side front door. It is right down here underneath the door, essentially. There's a big plastic cover that goes under there. That's not that big, but it takes like 6, 8 bolts, something like that, to get it out. Unfortunately, there's 3 different types of connectors. Why, I have no idea, but came out relatively easy. We got it back up on the quick stands, and now we just need to get under there and take it out. Luckily, this doesn't feel too brittle, and this should just pop right off. Maybe feels a hair brittle. Oh, it's gonna tear right off, isn't it? Yeah, I can feel it coming apart. Yep, that's right. I knew that was gonna happen. I've got a new fuel line for this very reason. Oh yeah, it's stuck to the pipe. Make my life a little easier. There we go. That one came off at least. There we go. The GoPro ended up dying, which isn't a surprise. The batteries on this thing are terrible. But it's okay. I was pretty much done anyway. Was the return line that comes out of the filter and goes back to the tank was leaking back out of the tank into here, which you can see how much is in there. But I came up with an idea. I just took the bolt that I used to hold the hood directly straight up and down, jammed it in there with a couple of hose clamps, one on the bolt and one on the fuel line, and it stopped the leak altogether. So we're good that way. All I really need to do now is I need to get the clamp off here, and then we can measure how much line we have on either end, cut the fuel line, get this thing all prepped to go. But tomorrow, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to wait till tomorrow to go get the vacuum line. But I wanted to measure it and see how wide the inside of this guy is. Not that this is the most accurate thing in the world. Looks like a 4 mil on the inside, 7 mil on the out, 7.5. Yep. So 4 mil inside, 7 mil outside. Hopefully they have some at the AutoZone tomorrow. Advanced Auto, O'Reilly's, somewhere. 4 mil. That shouldn't be that difficult to get. I wanted to check the size of this one too. So this is, I should zero that out. 7.5 mil inside, 13 mil outside. Which I believe this is probably the same. This is actually a little thicker, but it's probably swollen, which if I get it in the middle. Yeah, 13 mil outside. Although I've cut the line, so it's not gonna be very accurate on the inside. Yeah, that spreads a little bit, 7.5. So this should be the same. What did I say this was? 7.5 inside, 13 outside. That is the right fuel line. And plus this is the stuff I got from BMW. So this is legit very expensive. It's like 30 bucks for a meter. Crazy. But we'll go ahead and get this clamp off and then set up the new one. We'll be good to go. I think one of the things that amazes me is how much sediment there is in here. Like how do you get sediment into fuel? Seems a little weird. I'm gonna have to manhandle it to get this thing off of here, I think. Because I don't want to rip the retention clip off, but at the same time, I gotta get this thing off here somehow. Aha. There we go. That wasn't too bad. I just need to make sure it's in the right spot. I think we're gonna want to try and get this to center up. So let's put it right there. I'm gonna go ahead and mark both sides of it so that's centered in there. Make sure it's in the middle. Good. Now let's measure these guys. 60 mil. Right at 60 mil on that side. And pretty much the same one here. So we just cut 3 60 mil pieces. So if I do that, then I want to make sure that I have these guys facing the right direction so that they're easy to take off and on later on. So that one's facing down, and rather than doing this one the same direction, I'm going to turn it around so that there's enough of a gap between them, and they're both facing down. And then same thing on this side. I just want it facing down, same orientation. Those guys are ready to go. This one's ready to go. We've got 3 to connect, and then all I need to do tomorrow is get this guy, get the vacuum line, and this should go on in about 5 minutes, and we'll be done. All right, I got some vacuum tubing, so now went ahead and got a little extra, but there's probably gonna have to be some I'm gonna have to replace inside the engine bay, so just got a little extra. And I didn't measure how long this was going to need to be, so we'll just go ahead and put on a chunk of it. This is really easy to cut with scissors, so we'll put on a little bit extra, and then we can trim it once we're under the car. And then the vacuum line is gonna go on this guy right here. And I think this side I'm gonna have to trim down a little bit. Probably have to trim this, I'll have to trim that a little bit, but we'll go see how it fits. So let's get into the car and put this thing in. Yes. Yeah, a little bit of fuel, not too bad. Burns. All right, we've got a fuel filter in place. My wrists are burning from the gas. It hurts. This has always been known to be a bit of a pain in the neck, trying to get this on. And it went on, no problem, of course. That'll work. And I got the vacuum line, got all the fuel lines in. This is connected, it's good to go. Let's go put the fuse back in and get it started. Ooh, that is running rough. It's getting fuel. There we go, I think we just had a combination of a low gas and a dead battery from trying to crank it over so many times. All right, I'm not gonna let it run too much because I need to get this thing to get some gas in it, but I need to let it charge for a little bit. So I'll let the battery charge for about half an hour, and then we'll take this thing down and put a bunch of gas in it. This is gonna work. This is gonna work. Well, the fuel filter and the fuel pump are working like a charm. So now let's get back onto this cluster. This is probably one of the hardest ones I've ever had to do. I've done this a couple of times to have the other one break, and so I got this from a spare that I tore apart. I got from a friend of mine for a really cheap price. That wasn't working. The pixels was dead. Motors were not working on it, so I got it for a really cheap price. I was able to get this piece replaced, the bracket for the LCD, and I got the new LCD in. I'm sorry I didn't film very much of it, but it was such a struggle to get it in for some reason that I just kept working on it until I got it in here. So now it's in. We can go ahead and get our screws in here, hoping that they go in and they don't break it, because even this bracket is cracked on one side, but it's low down. It's not part of where the screws are, so I wasn't worried about it, and it was super minor. In fact, even if the piece broke off, it wouldn't change anything, but it's in much better shape than the other one was, so it's essentially new in that regard. All right, one more, uno más. And then we can get the back on this thing. We can go give it a test. That would be awesome if this thing was working tonight. I would be able to actually put this into the episode. All right, let's get it back on, and then get everything torqued down, and we'll go give it a quick test. Get fingerprints all over the LCDs. Hopefully we'll be able to clean that off. We also need to test all the gauges. I swear, just how I had to manhandle this thing, I would not be at all surprised if I damaged one of the gauges. So far, so good. All right, let's go put this thing into the car and test it. After much gnashing of teeth and rending of garments over the last, I guess 10 hours, because I went to bed last night out of sheer frustration with the issues I was having with this guy. But it's resolved, except for one little thing that keeps cropping up on there that I can't, maybe it's just pure bad luck is probably the case of it, but I've tried probably 3 or 4 bulbs in one side and none of them are working. So what I thought I would do really quickly, show you this little test bench thing that I have set up here. I have this bench testing power supply, which is really super handy. You can turn it on, and I have it set 12 volts right now, but you can set it up to 30 volts, and you can also set it via amps, watts, things like that, and then you can lock the current so that then you can apply it with, this goes down here, a couple of alligator clips. And when we do that on something like this, I can test the light bulbs to make sure the next one I put in is good. Then this is actually really super handy. So I thought I'd show this to you guys. Let's switch over to the other camera really quick. All right, I've got the power supply set to 12 volts. We're gonna go ahead and turn on the output. That means it is now live. And then I've got this old block that came out of this originally that I replaced because it had the cracked edge on it. And the kind of cool thing about this is that it has these, basically the hot service to each one of the light bulbs, and then it's got a ground that connects them all through the center. And so I can connect my DC power supply here to the ground. Actually, let's do it on this other side. No, this should be fine over here. I keep touching this one. These two are broken right here. So I got it connected to the ground, so now the ground bar is connected, and now I can just touch this to any of the live ones, and it shows me whether or not those bulbs are working. So, you know, that one looks pretty good, that one looks okay. This one is actually quite bright, which means that's a really pretty good bulb, and this one's pretty dull, so that's not the best. The 4, that's not the best bulb. And so this is one of the 4 that I've taken out of this side on this one. I'm just curious whether or not it's going to work, and it doesn't. So touching everywhere on that bar, that bulb was burned out. This is really handy in being able to test our bulbs and see if they're working. And I've already taken one that I had in here previously that was the best of the 5 bulbs I was testing earlier and put it into that particular slot on this one. So now it should hopefully work really well. Let's take the GoPro. We're gonna go plug this guy in. See, hopefully for the last time it works. All right, let's hope I have enough light in here to get this to work. Now I just gotta plug these guys into the back here. Hopefully for the last time. I wish I could put a camera back there so you could see me trying to struggle bust these guys in here. There we go. Finally. And because my light was on, my battery's dead. Okay, we got the jump pack on there now. So no, I can at least start it. I don't know if it's going to help me power this thing up. Yes. So there we go. It is now in much better shape. You can actually see all the bulbs are working, all the stripes are working, or all the LED bits are working, or LCD, I keep saying LED, LCD bits are working. All the lights work, all the bulbs work. Job done. Well, I think that's it for this episode. It was a bit of a continuity nightmare, kind of having to wait for parts, go pick up parts to take care of those issues, but all in all, it went really well. We have a working cluster, we have a new fuel pump, and a new fuel filter. Doesn't seem like we got a lot done in this one, but I think it was some very important bits and parts, and we got a couple of things marked off on the board. Next episode, we're going to be concentrating on mostly the top of the engine. We're going to replace the air intake doohickle-dad over there. We're going to take out the auxiliary pump and heater control valve, and we're going to be rebuilding that. And then we're going to do the belly pan gutter on top and probably spend a little time with the fuel injectors. I might do that off screen. I don't know yet. We'll see how that goes. But hope to see you guys in the next episode. Please hit the old thumbs up, like, subscribe. The algorithm is hugely important to my new channel. And I really appreciate comments and the likes and the thumbs and the watches and the views and the subscriptions and things like that. It means a lot to me. It tells me that this channel is worthwhile to you. So please consider subscribing if you haven't, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.